through our website www.wadr.org. WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Major opposition political parties in Côte d'Ivoire denounce Constitutional Council's validated candidate lists, describe move as weaponization of judiciary. Senegal hosts 2025 Africa's Business Heroes semi-finals to support African innovators.
This year in our top 20, we have 45% female representation. We really encourage female entrepreneurs to apply.
National Union of Petroleum Workers of Nigeria suspends industrial action following an agreement with Dangote Refinery, and Liberian audits uncovers financial irregularities as civil society demands swift anti-corruption action.
Center is deeply troubled by these audit findings, which show continuous gross weaknesses in government's revenue collection and financial management systems and processes. Similar audit of the consolidated account in previous years showed even worrying trends, which indicates that national government is not doing enough.
Details of these stories and more coming up in the next 30 minutes if you be my guests.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink begins with some political matters in Côte d'Ivoire, where tension continues to mount with strong political figures and parties denouncing the validated candidate list for the October 25 presidential election. For many of the political actors, the Constitutional Council's decision demonstrates the weaponization of justice system by the state. The two major opposition parties, the PDCI and PPACI, have all reacted. First, the opposition PPACI's lawyers, Habiba Toure, described the Constitutional Council's verdict as one that does not reflect the will of the people constitutionally.
The Electoral Code seemed to be prioritized over the Constitution, and this approach is evident and undeniable. Article 127 of the Constitution confirms it, and you can verify this yourself. It's worth stressing that this Electoral Code was amended by none other than the head of state, Alassane Ouattara, who also happens to be the RHDP president and a presidential candidate. By choosing to rely on an ordinary text that was ultimately revised by the head of state, rather than adhering to and enforcing the Constitution, the Constitutional Council has undermined its role as the protector of the country's fundamental law.
And that the opposition PPACI's lawyer Habiba Toure reacting to the Constitutional Council's verdict on the final candidate list for the October presidential election. On the other hand, Executive Secretary of PDCI, Amos Sylvester, raised concerns about the rejection of its leader Tijani Chiam from the electoral race after meeting all the conditions required by law.
The PDCI RDA deeply regrets that the only alternative available to Côte d'Ivoire for a truly peaceful coexistence, namely peaceful change, has been sacrificed. The PDCI RDA calls on its activists, the peace-loving Ivorians and inhabitants of Côte d'Ivoire, to remain resolutely determined for a Côte d'Ivoire of democracy and justice.
Executive Secretary of PDCI, Amos Sylvester. Still in Côte d'Ivoire, but on matters of labor, negotiations have begun with the authorities and the platform representing the local government employees unions. Members of the SATCI, the National Labour of Labour Government Employees, launched a week-long strike yesterday until September 15, 2025, across all city halls, regional councils and districts nationwide. The workers are pressing for key demands, including the payment of presidential social measures announced in August 2022, as well as the settlement of outstanding retirement benefits. Here is more details with Abdullah Hassan.
The head of Côte d'Ivoire's local government union platform has announced the opening of negotiations with authorities in a bid to resolve the ongoing strike affecting local administrations. In a video message, he praised union members for complying with the strike directive and outlined the next steps in dialogue with the government. The workers are demanding the payment of presidential social measures announced since August 2022, including back pay dating from January 2023. Their demands also cover the settlement of retirement benefits, an increase in the transportation allowance, and the implementation of a long-awaited decree on the organization of the municipal police. For now, the strike order remains in effect until September 15 and applies across city halls, regional councils, and districts nationwide. Union members insist the strike was triggered by what they describe as the government's silence in the face of urgent and legitimate demands. While they have expressed satisfaction with the level of compliance among workers, the Ivorian authorities dispute this, maintaining that the strike has not been fully observed. As a reminder, local government employees had already gone on strike from January 29 to 31, 2025.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Still on matters of labor, but in Nigeria, a major disruption to the fuel supply chain has been averted after the country's oil workers union suspended a 2-day strike. The deferment follows a breakthrough agreement with the Dangote refinery, Africa's largest oil processing facility. WADR's Usman Umar has the details.
The strike by the Nigerian Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, had threatened to cause fuel scarcity across Nigeria and beyond its borders, where the country's refined petroleum products are in high demand. Union members, particularly tanker drivers, stopped lifting fuel on Monday in protest against what they described as attempts by the Dangote refinery to block its drivers from joining their ranks. The refinery, which operates thousands of trucks, is considered a vital hub not only for Nigeria but for West Africa's energy market. After hours of tense negotiations brokered by Nigeria's secret police, that is the Department of State Services, both sides struck a deal late Tuesday. NUPENG President Williams Akporeha confirmed that Dangote refinery has now agreed to allow its drivers to unionize. The strike had already taken a toll before the agreement was reached. Filling stations in several Nigerian states shut their doors, while operations at depots in Port Harcourt and Delta State were disrupted. Trucks were parked in depots in Lagos and Warri as drivers awaited further instructions. The Dangote refinery, which only recently began operations, is expected to significantly reduce Africa's dependence on imported petroleum products, with an output capacity projected to supply markets from Ghana to Senegal. Analysts say any disruption at the facility could have ripple effects across the sub-region. For now, the suspension brings relief to Nigerians anxious about fuel shortages, but it also underscores the fragility of the oil sector as labor rights and corporate interests continue to collide in West Africa's largest economy. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Back here in Senegal, the country is the spotlight this week as it plays host to the semi-finals of the prestigious Africa's Business Heroes competition, an initiative of the Jack Ma Foundation. The program seeks to identify and provide investment support to investors or innovators providing solutions to African challenges. This marks the first time the event is being held in a French-speaking country, a strong signal of inclusion and regional representation. Sankole Janko was at the event and filed this report.
It's a proud moment for Senegal as the country hosts the 2025 semi-finals of the Africa's Business Heroes competitions September 10 and 11. The event, backed by the Jack Ma Foundation, brings together 20 of the continent's most promising entrepreneurs, including 3 from Francophone Africa, to pitch their businesses to an esteemed panel of judges. Among the notable figures in attendance is Jason Powell, Executive Director of the Jack Ma Foundation, who emphasized the foundation's commitment to supporting grassroots innovation across Africa.
Over the last 7 years, we've received over 150,000 applications from all 54 African countries. Our program itself has given out $10 million to 60 top 10 entrepreneurs. And collectively, they've raised over $150 million in investment and have created over 123,000 jobs.
Also present is Zahara Boateng, Managing Director for Africa at Africa's Business Heroes, who highlighted the growing inclusion of women in entrepreneurship, with 36% of this year's semi-finalists being female.
It's part of our DNA from the very beginning. In fact, our first 3 grand prize winners were all female. This year in our top 20, we have 45% female representation. We really encourage female entrepreneurs to apply. We try and ensure our marketing specifically targets them to encourage them to apply.
One of the entrepreneurs flying the Senegalese flag is Seini Samba, founder of Le Lion Show, a baby food production company focused on local nutritious ingredients. She joins fellow French-speaking innovators Jean Lobe of Waspito and Racine Sarr of Shop Me Away.
What motivated me is seeing the fact that smallholder farmers are facing farm losses up to 60%, while on the other hand, we have babies who are suffering from a form of malnutrition. And in our land, we have all the super products, baobab, kopi, moringa, fonio, millet. So we need to add value in this product and to feed our communities.
With a total prize pool of $1.5 million, this year's top 10 business heroes stand to win between $100,000 and $300,000 each. Last year's competition was also marked by Senegalese success. Henry Usman Gay, co-founder and CEO of Eon, took home the top prize of $300,000 for his innovation in healthcare tech. Beyond the competition, Senegal's selection as host carries diplomatic weight. It reflects deepening ties with China, particularly through the Alibaba Group's support for the 2026 Youth Olympic Games, as reaffirmed during President Bassirou Diomaye Faye's official visit to China in July.
Sankole Janko filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Still in Senegal, a 5-year study by the International Development Research Center in Senegal has revealed that the Wadr region accounts for nearly 70% of female genital mutilation. The study also reveals that 50.7% of young girls experience physical violence and other gender-based violence, such as rape and forced marriages. To protect the future of Senegalese young people, stakeholders in the global health community have called on authorities to implement prudent reforms aimed at improving reproductive health while combating gender-based violence. Augustin qualified this report.
For the past 5 years, the Improving Reproductive Health of Adolescent Girls in Senegal program research has been focused on building capacity and generating evidence-based linkages on the interactions between gender-based violence and adolescent reproductive health. The study revealed that the Wadr region in the south of the country accounts for nearly 70% of female genital mutilation, FGM. The research also seeks to collaborate and develop effective policies to protect adolescents from gender-based violence and improve their health. Speaking at a policy dialogue, the regional director of the International Development Research Center, Marie Glorious Ingaberi, stressed the need for an approach to safeguard the nation's reproductive sector.
This issue of gender-based violence and adolescent reproductive health has also a big component in terms of socio-cultural practices, like the female genital mutilation. There is a good law, but if communities are not embracing the change, You will not see that happening.
With funding from Global Affairs Canada, Director of International Cooperation at the Embassy of Canada, Caroline Abbott, calls for greater advocacy for combating sexual gender-based violence and its worst form of femicide.
I think that's the worst form of abuse that you can think about, that someone loses his life just because of its gender. So it's important to talk about gender equality. It's important to talk about women's rights. It's important to talk about human right protection and find avenues and find a solution that help us as a society to move closer to a just, fair society.
The policy dialogue offered an opportunity to present recommendations, including access to quality reproductive health and data, to the Senegalese authorities for reforms.
Augustine Colley filed that report. Away from Senegal, let me take you to Ghana, as international trade experts is calling on the Ministries of Trade and Foreign Affairs to step in and resolve the growing tensions between Ghanaian and Nigerian spare parts traders at Abose-Okai Hub. The dispute, which has led to the closure of shops belonging to foreign nationals, is raising fears of further escalation. From Accra, Nadi Data reports.
The Nigerian Traders Association is unhappy with the closure of their shops. They argue that the Spare Parts Dealers Association has no legal basis to shut down businesses belonging to foreign nationals. Here is the president of the Nigerian Traders Association, Evaritus Inwako.
We've been all over and over, and we've been going on this thing over and over again since 2007. Where is it taking us? We need a peaceful Africa. We need a peaceful ECOWAS.
But the Abose-Okai Spare Parts Dealers Association says the action is justified. According to them, it is meant to enforce Ghana's investment laws, which reserves retail and petty trading exclusively for citizens. International trade expert and executive director of the AFCFTA Policy Network, Louise Affle, has described the closure as unnecessary. He is urging the Ministries of Trade and Foreign Affairs to intervene swiftly and resolve the impasse to protect relations between the two trading communities.
There is a committee at Ministry of Trade. There is a committee that works closely with ECOWAS. And there's a committee there's a joint committee, I think, under the previous government that was tasked to engage in this cyclical issue I'm talking about. That committee should really be reactivated to quickly go back to resolve this before it spirals.
The dispute adds to long-standing tensions over Ghana's retail laws, with local traders demanding stricter enforcement, while foreign traders insist on fair treatment. Stakeholders fear that without immediate dialogue, the situation could spiral into a broader trade conflict. For WDR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Major opposition political parties in Côte d'Ivoire denounced Constitutional Council's validated candidate list, describe outcome as weaponization of judiciary. Senegal hosts 2025 Africa's Business Heroes semi-finals to support African innovators. National Union of Petroleum Workers of Nigeria suspends industrial action following an agreement with Dangote Refinery. And still ahead, Liberian audit uncovers financial irregularities as civil society demands swift anti-corruption action. We do have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Liberia at the moment, where the country is facing renewed scrutiny following the release of an audit report exposing major discrepancies in government revenue collection and disbursement. The General Auditing Commission's findings covering the period from January 1 to December 31, 2024 points to weaknesses in financial management, including undocumented disbursement and underfunding of key sectors. The report reveals that the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning disbursed more than 2.8 million beyond the approved national budget. At the same time, a $78.2 million in appropriations was never released, affecting 106 ministries and agencies, with health and education among the hardest hit. The Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, CENTAL, through its executive director, Anderson Miami, has urged the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission to swiftly act. He expressed deep concerns over the findings, stressing the urgent need for reforms to strengthen accountability and address the systemic flaws in public financial management.
CENTAL is deeply troubled by these audit findings, which show continuous gross weaknesses in government's revenue collection and financial management systems and processes. Similar audit of the consolidated account in previous years showed even worrying trends, which indicates that national government is not doing enough to break away from the ugly past in some areas. This needs urgent attention. We wish to make the following recommendations to improve transparency and accountability around government spending, maximize domestic revenue mobilization, and enhance accountability and integrity within the Liberian judiciary. That the Liberian Anti-Corruption Commission timely and thoroughly investigates off-budget spending, honor disbursement to health, education, and critical sectors, and other performance and accountability issues raised by the audit report. The findings and recommendations of the investigation must be published and timely implemented, including holding those implicated in any wrongdoings fully accountable for their actions and inaction. 2. Urge the Joint Public Accounts Committee of the Legislature to timely review and conduct inclusive public hearings on findings of the report on the consolidated account. The outcomes of such hearings must be documented and fully implemented by the Presidency to hold any wrongdoers accountable. Citizens must demand the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning and other government spending entities to fully comply with the public financial management law and other regulations relating to public spending to properly safeguard and utilize public resources to positively impact the lives of ordinary Liberians.
Anderson Miami is the Executive Director for the Center for Transparency and Accountability, CENTAL in Liberia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In our guest interview, we take you back to Nigeria as a major disruption in the fuel supply chain has been averted after the country's oil workers union suspended a 2-day strike. The deferment follows a breakthrough agreement with the Dangote refinery, Africa's largest oil processing facility. Our guest is Joycelyn Ada, an oil and gas sector analyst in Nigeria.
The first thing you should understand is that the government really needs Dangote refinery. Our national refineries are not working. They are all not working. The 3 major national refineries are shut down. Dangote refinery practically is the only refinery that is refining oil in Nigeria. And that is why you saw that immediately the government got involved with this whole issue in the first place, because Dangote refinery is very important to the country right now. Now, you should also understand that the cost of fuel in Nigeria is one of the biggest bother to the people. Nigerians are not used to paying so much for fuel. So the hope Nigerians had was that the coming on board of Dangote refinery was going to crash the price of fuel, and that is still the hope they have. So that is why, I mean, the union issue, if you look at it, it had nothing to do with the government, but they had to get quickly involved with this to resolve this, because they know that this is the assumption of Nigerian.
What can you say about why Dangote didn't want his staff to be unionized?
Okay, because when they make demands and you don't meet their demands, they could really hold you by the neck. Let me use that word for a better word. They could really, hold you to ransom. Now, not having them in a union, for instance, if they were not affiliated with any union and they had demands, NUPENG would not go on strike for them, because NUPENG would say, You're not part of the union. So if they had gone on strike on their own, it would affect only about 2 or 3%, if not even less, of Nigerians. But having them unionized is going to really have a big say in the daily activities of the refinery. If they say, oh, we want better wages, and Dangote says, oh, I cannot give you better wages. The authorities of Dangote say, we cannot give you, better than what we are giving right now. Now, if they go to the union, of course, the union would look at it and say, okay, yeah, we feel your demands are right, they're just. If the union join forces and say, okay, we would shut down, we are not working anymore, definitely that affects a whole lot of Nigerians, like just what you just witnessed.
Has there been a track record where the government addressed these concerns raised by the various unions within the oil and gas sectors in Nigeria?
No, there haven't been that. The unions have never made any request that has been outrageous. When they make their demands, it's just basic things they ask for. I think a year ago, they wanted better roads. They were having a lot of accidents on the roads, and this was taking a lot of lives and properties. And they said, okay, this is happening because we don't have good roads.
How do you think an addition to the already existing unions within the oil and gas sector in Nigeria will help address the challenges that they continue to face?
If for anything, it's even a win for them having Dangote people come on board with their union. Why is this? If, for instance, there's a demand made and Newslink shuts down and Dangote is still supplying, the effect of their shutdown would not be felt so much. So having one voice, unity, is even better for them. It even pushes home their points the more, so that once they have one voice and they make a demand, so the government will have no choice but to respond to their demand. But again, their demands have always been met? Of course, the answer is no. Their demands have not always been met.
Joycelyn Ada is an oil and gas sector analyst in Nigeria. And in sports news this evening, former majority leader in Ghana's parliament, Osei Mensah Bonsu, has cast doubt over coach Otto Addo's competency to lead the Black Stars as the 2026 World Cup if the team is to qualify. Ghana is on course to secure a place in the global showpiece to be staged next year as they command a 3-point lead in Group I ahead of the final 2 games in the qualifiers. Despite the team's win over Mali in Accra in the World Cup qualifiers, the coach's performance has been unconvincing, says the former majority leader, Osei Mensah Bonsu. Well, let me bring you some of the latest World Cup qualifiers results, as Togo yesterday took on Sudan and then thrashed Sudan 1-0. Cape Verde convincingly won over Cameroon 1-0, and Mauritania also drew 0-0 with South Sudan. Angola won over Mauritius 3-1 in that encounter, and Gambia also took on Burundi, defeating Burundi 2-0. Ivory Coast also held a goalless draw against Gabon in yesterday's encounter, whereas Senegal came from a 2 goals down to win yesterday's game 3-2 over Democratic Republic of Congo, whereas South Africa also held 1 goal apiece against Nigeria, and then Burkina Faso held 0-0 game against Egypt in yesterday's encounter. And that ends sports this evening. And with that, we've come to the end of this evening's edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Many thanks to you for doing the listening, and a special thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismail Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us on all of our social media platforms, X formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our gender program 50-50 with Na Dede Tete. I am Christopher Ticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcast.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County.
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM, Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and